Good morning, everyone. We appreciate you joining us today. You have ventured into the New Haven Fairfield EMA Programmatic and Fiscal Monitoring Technical Assistance webinar. If you don't mind, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you could please drop your name, the agency and region in which you work or represent into the chat so that we can take attendance. We would greatly appreciate it. If you've already done so, no need to duplicate that effort. Next slide. So we'd like to do quick introductions of the collaborative research team. We are the consultants to the New Haven Fairfield County's eligible metropolitan area Ryan White Part A program. And collaborative research will be responsible for conducting the annual comprehensive monitoring site visits for all of the funded regional leads and sub-recipients to test compliance with fiscal, programmatic, and universal monitoring standards. So quick introduction of the collaborative research team. My name is Thomas Rodriguez Shucker, and then I have my colleague Derek
Jackson, collaborative research.
And my colleague Nathan Holscher.
Nathan Holscher, collaborative research.
Right, and our other colleague Clifford was not able to join us, but he will be also assisting in the review and monitoring process this year. And let's turn it over to the recipients team, if you don't mind. Tom?
Hold on. You know the mute thing. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Butcher. I am the recipient for the Ryan White office, and I'm always excited to work with the collaborative team on this process. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Hello,
Tom.
everyone. Good morning. Arvil Alisa. I'm the data processing project coordinator in the Part A office. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And then Ella?
Hi, good morning. Ella P. Cars, Quality Assurance Manager, Part A Office.
All right, great. Anyone else from the recipient's office that I missed? Is the Lakeisha Green on? No. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. And everyone else, we appreciate you putting your name and agency that you represent in the chat. Thank you. All right, next slide. All right, so some quick updates on the new process this year. So it's going to look very similar to the years past. However, there are a couple of quick updates to the monitoring process. So for the service category chart reviews, we are going to ask that regional leads and sub-recipients be responsible for reviewing and completing the service category monitoring tools for each of your chart pool lists. All chart pool lists will contain 10 random charts per service category for the Ryan White fiscal year, grant year 22-23. And that includes March 1st of 2022 to February the 28th of 2023. So that entire grant year. The deadline for completing and uploading the monitoring tool to the FTP site will be December the 15th, 2023. Collaborative research staff will be on site between January 15th and January the 19th to conduct the final monitoring interviews with each of the regional leads. This year, there will not be an entrance interview as we have had in the past. However, there will be a final comprehensive exit interview again that will take place between January 15th and the 19th at each of the regional leads. Collaborative research will be on site for these exit interviews, and they'll be conducted jointly with the Ryan White Recipients Office and the collaborative research team. Next slide. What will not change this year is that your fiscal monitoring uploads to the FTP site will be the exact same. The monitoring tool looks the exact same. So we'll look at that a little later in some detail. You'll just simply look at the monitoring tool and upload the compliance documents to the particular category or folder for that compliance monitoring performance measure. And the same with the universal. So no changes to either the fiscal or the universal monitoring, just to the chart review process. Next slide. So again, the fiscal, universal, and service category will all be completed via the FTP site upload. Again, no changes with fiscal and universal. You will utilize the HRSA-HAB fiscal monitoring standards for both fiscal and universal monitoring. For the service category specific chart reviews, we'll utilize the Ryan White New Haven Fairfield EMA service performance catalog and service standards to look at programmatic compliance for monitoring standards to test compliance with each of the service categories. Those will also be required to be uploaded to the FTP site by December the 15th. Next slide. All right, thank you. Fiscal monitoring. The fiscal monitoring period will be looking at reimbursement requests for the month of January of 2023. You'll be asked to upload all of those compliance documents in relation to the Uniform Administrative Requirements and Cost Principles in 2 CFR 200, 45 CFR 75, and HRSA HAB program letters. Review of the fiscal monitoring tool. Regional leads and sub-recipients are encouraged to review these fiscal monitoring tools to understand the requirements for demonstrating compliance with each of those performance measures. Again, uploads must be completed to the FTP site no later than December the 15th. And as necessary, if we see that there are some compliance documents or questions regarding that particular fiscal monitoring performance measure, we will reach out to you to have discussion about that as needed. Next slide. So the fiscal monitoring requirements aligns with the national monitoring standards, and that includes limitations of use, unallowable costs, income from fees, imposition and assessment of client charges, fiscal management, property standards, cost principles, auditing requirements, and fiscal procedures. Again, documents used for compliance in each of the above sections should be uploaded to the FTP site for review. Next slide. So now we'll take a look at the fiscal monitoring tool. This is only a snippet. So for instance, under subrecipient services, number 42, do you have subcontractors, including contract employees funded by the Ryan White program? If you do in fact have a subcontractor or a contract employee funded, you would simply click yes in that checkbox, and then you would upload the compliance documents for all of your annual budgets for each of those service providers into question 42's box on the FTP site. Again, the same thing for number 45. Do you have policies and procedures for tracking time and effort related to Ryan White HIV/AIDS program personnel? Here you would simply click yes, we do have those, and upload those policies and procedures. Or for any reason you do not, I would click other and say we do not have these policies or procedures. All right. Next slide. All right, let's take a pause right there. Any questions about fiscal monitoring? Again, pretty straightforward. And if you're wondering, will you have access to the previous year's FTP site? The answer to that in short form is yes. If you have had access in previous years, you will again have access to those folders for a review from prior years. If you are new to this process and this is your first time accessing the FTP site, we will ask you to let us know that you need access to those previous years so that we can add you onto those years so you can see those documents. Tom?
And Thomas, why is access to the previous year's documents important?
Yep.
How would they be helpful?
Great question, right? So what we don't want to do is ask you to continuously reinvent the wheel every year, right? A lot of policies and procedures don't change. However, sometimes, HRSA loves to update things once every 12 years. Sometimes they update something and your policy or procedure may change. So if you've made changes to those policies or procedures, it'd be easier for you to go back, find out what you uploaded the previous year and say, yep, no changes. And I'm just going to simply move that over to the folder for this year, right? So the good thing about the FTP site is that you have a historical view of everything you've uploaded in the past. The heavy lift was probably 4 years ago when we instituted the FTP site and getting all those documents there in the first place. So we've come through that heavy lift. Now you have historical view. So like Tom said, if you have uploaded those in the past and nothing has changed, simply move those forward into the new grant year. Great question, Tom. Thank you, sir. All right. Hearing no questions for fiscal, we'll move on to universal. So again, the universal monitoring tool will ask regional leads and sub-recipients to complete the universal monitoring tool and upload those to the FTP site no later than December the 15th of this year. Again, as we start reviewing those, if we need or have any questions regarding the documents you may have uploaded, we will reach out to you individually to schedule a time to discuss that. Again, it's very similar to the fiscal monitoring process, and we'll look at that in the next slide. So it includes access to care, eligibility determination, payer of last resort, anti-kickback statute, recipient accountability, reporting, and monitoring. Next slide. So the tool specifically, here you'll also see some programmatic pieces in the universal monitoring tool. So for instance, if you see, does your organization provide early intervention services for Ryan White using Ryan White funds? The New Haven Fairfield tool will only have Part A and MAI. You won't see Part B, C, D, F, general funds, and all that good jazz. This is just an example of the tool. So if you're not funded for EIS services, you simply click the no box, and you will not have any documents to upload to compliance for that particular piece. Tom? Oh, you're on mute, sir. Yep.
Going on 4 years. Come on now, I should get this right? None of us in the EMA provide services, the EIS service. That has been changed to intensive case management. So that answer for everybody would be no, because we're no longer providing EIS. We're doing intensive case management.
Great thing to point out, Tom. Thank you. I will say there probably are some tricky questions in here. Don't let them trick you up. So especially under fiscal, when it says, do you provide any of the following services? And it's a list of services that are unallowable costs. Please do not check the yes boxes, because that's not an allowable cost, right? So it's just kind of a fail-safe to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and asking you, like, do you provide this service, right? And if the answer is no, it's not, don't feel like it's a trick question. Just click no and say, nope, we don't provide that service, and move on. Great point out, Tom. So for instance, like number 3, does your organization provide medical case management services? And if the answer to that is yes, you would upload documentation of assurances and maintain documentation showing that medical case management are provided by trained professionals. Or policies and procedures maintaining client records to include the required elements for compliance. Again, these are the minimum requirements that HRSA requires as far as policies and procedures for each of those particular funded service categories. Next slide. So once we get away from the programmatic piece, we start into the universal. Does your organization have structured and ongoing efforts to obtain client input? Hint to everyone, this box should definitely be checked. Yes, this is a requirement. You can either have a CAB, a consumer advisory board. You can use a suggestion box. You can have, client satisfaction surveys. We want to make sure that somehow, some way that you're taking clients' input and implementing that into everyday service delivery. It's part of the quality improvement process, right? So we want to make sure that you're including all of that, and it is a federal requirement. So again, all of those documents for this particular universal monitoring tool, number 6, would go into the folder labeled 6 for that particular upload. Next slide. Any questions about universal monitoring? Again, same process as last year and the previous years.
Thomas, have the monitoring tools for universal and fiscal changed at all?
No, sir, they have not.
They're the same. Okay.
They are the exact same. No updates from HRSA HAB, thank goodness, in the last 2 years. So a lot of this should be just a simple move and copy and paste in the new folders. Yes, sir. So again, we got rid of that heavy lift year where we were trying to find all those policies and procedures. So we're kind of in smooth sailing from this point on. Great question. I appreciate that, Stuart. All right, so FTP site access and uploads. Regional leads and sub-recipient staff are responsible for uploading, reviewing compliance documents for the fiscal and universal monitoring. And you will need access to the FTP site to successfully upload those components. The FTP site is a web-based HIPAA-compliant portal. However, you should not share any patient private health information, right? So we don't want to see medical records there. If by chance a particular fiscal document has a client's name, we do ask that you extract that name with a Sharpie or some shape or form of getting rid of that name. However, if you do make the mistake of accidentally uploading that, rest assured it is a HIPAA compliant site, and that's why we require people to gain access to this, and it's regulated. Also, uploading compliance documents. Many questions on both fiscal and universal monitoring tools would require subrecipient staff to upload those compliance documents. Again, the FTP site is set up to align directly with the monitoring tool. So if you're working on question 7 in fiscal and you have documents for question 7, we ask you to upload those documents to the folder labeled 7 under fiscal monitoring. If those documents are able to be used in question 7, 8, 9, and 10, we are going to ask you to upload that same document in each of those folders, right? Because we don't want to assume that you're using the same document from 7 for 8, 9, and 10. We want to be very blatant in our uploads, so please upload that multiple times if that is the correct relevant document for compliance. Next question. Next slide.
Thomas,
Yes.
Thomas, it said there that you can't have access after November 17th, but the due date is December 15th.
Correct. So we're asking everybody to sign up, because you'll receive in your monitoring packet a link to gain access to the FTP site. In past years, we did have some subrecipients wait until 2 or 3 days prior to the deadline to begin asking for access. So to help kind of curve that, because you're also going to need this to upload your monitoring tools for specific service categories, which means you're going to need access to this FTP site a lot sooner than 3 days before December 15th. So we're putting a deadline this year on it that everybody requests access by November the 17th to the FTP site. It's essential that you gain access to this in a timely manner so that you're not struggling the last minute to gain access and upload your documents. Tom?
So Thomas, we have a host of people on this call. Who are the people that should have access to this? I don't expect a case manager, let's say, to have access to this site to upload documents. So who are we talking about specifically?
That's a great question, Tom. And so specifically your fiscal staff who may be using the monitoring tool for fiscal to look at documents for compliance, we would ask that all of your fiscal staff who will be uploading documents to that have access. Same for your programmatic staff. So maybe your managers or supervisors of specific programs or project leads who would have specific agency-wide policies or procedures. And also, we ask that maybe a program manager have access to upload the monitoring tools for compliance to service categories. So again, I think a lot of agencies in the past have designated 1 or 2 points of contact within their agency to say, okay, Tom and Nathan, you're going to be the 2 people responsible for uploading these documents to the FTP site while the rest of your staff works on getting those documents together. That has, for me, been the best practice that I've seen utilized. So that way you don't have 15 staff with access and Joanne's uploading 5 documents and Tom's uploading 5 documents. And now you've mixed them across and there's a million documents in there, right? I picked on you, Joanne, because you raised your hand. Yes, ma'am. You're on mute. I feel like it should flash now, right? After 4 years, it should flash at you or something.
Will you send us something to get access to the site, or do we have
Yes,
to go to the website? You're going to send it.
Yes, ma'am. There will be a link in your monitoring packet that will send you to SurveyMonkey, and SurveyMonkey will ask you to register for that. There will be a question again to say, did you have access to previous years? So that will kind of flag us to let us know, like, hey, Joanne clicked no, she didn't have access, or yes, she does need access. And so that will give us the opportunity to start assigning you to folders for the FTP site previous years. Tom?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question, Joanne.
Thomas, I'd say the folks that had done this, let's say just in the past year, if they're the ones that had been assigned last year by the lead or there were designated people, those folks are still here in that capacity. They should be the ones that would be uploading and answering the questions and getting access. So that's my thinking, to keep it as simple as possible. If you had access last year to complete this process, you would be the right person to do it again, unless something's changed. That's my thinking, to make it, just simplify things a little bit more.
Yep, that's a great point. And that would also kind of help to make sure that you have access to previous year's documents that you have uploaded. So that would help out tremendously there as well. Great points. Thank you, sir. All right, next slide. So this is kind of a look at the web-based FTP site. Once you get the link to the FTP site with your login credentials, this is what it will look like. So your username will always be the email address that you use to register with, right? And if for any reason you happen to forget your password, you can always put your username in there and click the forgot password area. And it should reassign you, and always be on the lookout for an email from Arcus EFT. It will not come from Collaborative Research. It will not come from the recipient's office. It's a web-based portal, so it will come directly from GlobalScape Arcus EFT if you have trouble logging in. Again, Derek and I are always available if you have issues. We know that everything that's web-based or computer-based, there's always a nuance somewhere. We are here to help, so please don't fret. We will make sure that you can get in. Last year's login will work. However, it will not give you access to this year's folders. I saw that question in the chat, by the way. All right, next slide. So again, just to reiterate what the FTP site will look like. So on the left side, you will see Fiscal and Universal. This year, you'll also see a new folder that will be for the chart monitoring piece. This is where you'll upload your chart monitoring tool. Again, we're going to use the example as Fiscal. So if you're working on question 10 in Fiscal, you'll simply click on Fiscal, then Q10, and then you'll upload all of the required compliance documents for that particular question. And so at the end of all those clickouts, you'll see that all of your documents there on the right. And the FTP site is very user-friendly. You can either click, drop, and drag from your desktop on into the FTP site folder. So like question 10, you'll click on question 10. When you get there, it will be empty. You can simply drop and drag over to that question 10, and they will upload automatically. Or at the top of the site, you will find an upload button where you can kind of search your computer's folders to upload those documents. Next slide. So service category chart review. Keep in mind that this is our chart monitoring tool. We will be utilizing the EMA service standards, policy clarification notice 1602, and the national monitoring standards. Here, regional leads and subrecipients are encouraged to review the TGA EMA service standards, policy clarification notice 1602, and the national monitoring standards to understand the requirements for demonstrating compliance for each of the performance measures. Monitoring tools will be required to be uploaded to the FTP site no later than December the 15th. We want you to keep in mind that the monitoring tool for chart monitoring will have a tab for every service category. So for instance, if Joanne is only funded for substance use outpatient, Joanne will only complete the substance use outpatient tab, right? Don't fret that you have outpatient ambulatory in there and medical case management and whatever other service, right? So you only complete the tabs relevant to the chart pool list that you receive. And you'll upload that entire document to the chart monitoring tools section once you have completed that in the FTP site by Friday, December the 15th. Next slide. Exit interviews. In the past, the protocol for monitoring visits has been quite consistent, beginning with an entrance interview and wrapping it up with a preliminary exit interview. However, this year we will change the process. The entrance interview will not take place because we're asking each subrecipient and regional lead to complete the chart monitoring tools on their own. So there will not be an entrance interview. And there will not be an exit interview because you'll be uploading those compliance documents to the FTP site by what date? I'm gonna pick on Joanne. I gotta see you first. Do you remember the date? December 15th.
December 15th.
Yes. I'm gonna get you a cookie next time I see you. All right. So, but what we will do is hold a comprehensive regional exit interview. At the chart at the bottom, you'll see Region 1 will be January 15th, Region 2, January 16th, Region 3, January 17th, Region 5, January 18th, and Region 4, January 19th. The comprehensive regional exit interviews will be conducted jointly with the Ryan White Recipients Office and Collaborative Research. It is incumbent upon the regional leads to potentially mandate that a representative from each of the sub-recipients be present to ensure comprehensive review of quality assurance monitoring outcomes. These interviews are designed to synthesize and evaluate the regional quality assurance protocols, programmatic initiatives, and fiscal results, providing an overarching picture of the region's performance. Stuart?
So in the past for the chart poll, we've done it on Zoom where we've shown Derek, what each chart that he wants to see. So this year we're going to upload. How are we gonna? Can you explain again the
Yes, sir.
uploading of the chart poll?
Yep. So yes, sir, you're going to complete each sub-recipient and regional lead will complete their own chart pool list using that monitoring tool. So in the
Okay.
past, you showed us the documents. You're going to do that yourself this year and simply fill out that monitoring tool and then upload it by December the 15th. Hopefully creating a little less havoc in your life and trying to find a date to meet with Derek or myself. And it also gives an opportunity for each subrecipient to really familiarize themselves with the requirements. So it's also kind of a self-assessment technical assistant to make sure that each of our providers understand what those requirements are within that chart monitoring process. Great question, Stuart. Thank you.
Thomas, that's just the form that we always pre-fill out before you come, right?
Well, you may do that, not required in the past, but you may have done that kind of doing a self-audit. Yes, ma'am. So
Okay.
you will complete that on your own and upload those. That's correct.
And what, with a client ID number opposed to a name?
Right. No, there will be no names. It will just be a client ID number that we'll receive on that chart pool list from the recipient's office. That is
Thank
correct.
you.
You're welcome.
I
The
put a question in the chat. This is Ditas.
Oh.
And these 10 charts, will they be, in the past, they've been forwarded to us like with 1 week to actually get it done. And they were, is it going to be the same? 10 charts for each service category, and then you're going to let us know the names?
Yep, Divas, that's a great question. So when you get your monitoring packet, you will also get your chart pool list. So there's no more 5-day notice because everybody starts once they get their chart pool list, and you have till December the 15th to finalize your monitoring tools and your fiscal and universal uploads. Does that make sense?
And do you, again, since this is new, but do you have to actually like take a screenshot of the
No, ma'am.
location in the chart that you found that data, or it's just you fill out the monitoring tool?
Nope, you just fill out the monitoring tool. That's a great question. No screenshots. We're not expecting any backup documentation. If after we review that and we see there may be a need for additional monitoring, we will coordinate that with the recipient's office. But no, you would just complete the tool. No need for any documentation or upload for the chart monitoring compliance. Great question.
Thomas,
Yes.
so if you're in 3 regions, you got to be at 3 exit interviews. They're 5 hours each?
We're setting aside 5 hours. If depending on how the conversations go or what type of conversation takes place, they could. We don't foresee them lasting that long, but we'd rather schedule more time and be like, yeah, you get 2 hours back than trying to find additional time to sit and discuss things. All right. The comprehensive regional interviews are planned to be efficient, capped at a maximum of 5 hours in length. It is the responsibility of regional leads to procure an appropriate venue for these gatherings, a space sufficiently accommodating for all individuals required to be in attendance. Please plan for 2 collaborative research staff and 2 recipient staff to be present, plus whomever you have invited. We could make this optional to make it a hybrid meeting for the regions. So for instance, if a sub recipient wanted to join in on the conversation, but not quite come in person, I think we may be able to accommodate that particular situation. Just need to have a little bit of a heads up for that. However, we do encourage that people be there and be present so that the conversations can really be a joint effort between sub-recipients and the regional lead and the recipient's office. All right, next slide. So example of that chart pool monitoring. So we just snippet the beginning section of eligibility, and it will simply be a Y, an N, or an X if it's not applicable. There will be some sections where we do ask for particular dates of maybe when a care plan was completed, when the next care plan was completed, when their medical visits were. So there are, please read those notes in there under the red. If it says what was the date of the initial assessment, again, we will require you to put those dates in there as a compliance document or documentation of that compliance piece. Next slide. Site visit reports, final monitoring reports for regional leads can be expected within 30 days from the last monitoring visit. So from January, you will review those at the January exit interviews. So we'll have a very high level, almost finalized site visit report to review at those comprehensive exit interviews. Regional leads and sub recipients, if they need a corrective action plan or a CAP, will be asked to complete those and submit them back to the recipient's office within 20 business days of receipt of the final monitoring report. Monitoring report outcomes will include, Tom, go ahead, sorry. Okay. Monitoring report outcomes will be labeled into 3 categories. 1, satisfactory. These performance measures are deemed satisfactory and will not require any further action. Requires improvement. This this could require a regional lead to initiate a quality improvement project. Or 3, a corrective action. This would be deemed a finding and a corrective action plan will be required. Tom?
Look, I am muted.
Oh, woo.
Thomas, I was just looking at the dates for the regional meetings. The 15th is Martin Luther King holiday. So
okay.
we'll have to, just look
We'll
at.
circle back.
Okay, just
Yes, sir.
FYI.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next slide. So what are the next steps? Monitoring packets will be distributed to each of the regional leads and sub recipients by November the 10th. Monitoring packets will include the official notice of intent to conduct an annual site visit, your site visit schedule, monitoring tools, and instructions for documenting and uploading to the FTP site. Chart pool lists will be provided to each regional lead and sub recipient, a list of random charts to be monitored by each service category. Regional leads and sub recipients can expect the chart pool list by November the 10th. So Ditas, that gives you enough time to make sure that you're able to upload all those compliance documents for chart reviews by December 15th. FTP site uploads, everyone who is responsible for uploading documents to the FTP site are required to register for that FTP site no later than November the 17th. Regional leads and sub recipient staff should have completed their FTP site uploads no later than Friday, December the 15th. Again, for universal and fiscal monitoring compliance documents, if we need to review any of those compliance documents or have questions about your uploads, we will reach out to each of the subs or regional leads for a scheduled interview regarding those compliance documents on an as-needed basis. Next slide. Oh, not too far. All right. Any questions? All right. You probably already have Derek and I's email address. If not, they are on the screen. If you have questions going forward, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Also, please include the recipient's office on those questions so that everybody stays in the loop. Tom?
Thomas, I know, again, there's so many people on this call. Who should be the folks that are contacting you? So I'm thinking about a process. I'm thinking about, for me, for example, like a request for proposals and questions coming in. I'm thinking you would have a point of contact for fiscal, point of contact for program, and any questions that folks might have. Should they come through those point of contacts and ask those questions, or are you expecting anyone, anytime to ask you questions about the process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would recommend that you go through your point of contact at your agency. So if you're a case manager who has a specific question on a monitoring tool, I would highly recommend that you reach out to your single point of contact within your agency, and then they will be circled into the question to the recipient's office and the collaborative research team, so that everybody's kind of abreast of what's taking place and what questions have been asked, so we're not being duplicative in questions, so that we can share that and disseminate that amongst our staff.
So the leads should make it obvious to their sub recipients who the points of contact are.
I believe that would be a great process.
So when they designate, I'm expecting, I'll just make it clear, I'm expecting that each of the regions would say, here are the points of contact for the process. Any questions, please contact, boom, boom, and we will forward your questions on. If we can't answer them, because I think the leads can answer the questions, many of them. But if you can't, then we will send those questions out.
I like that. That's a great process. Yes.
Okay.
So please, if regional leads designate a single point of contact where questions from your subs can come to, and then disseminate those to the recipient's office and the collaborative research team.
So we're not allowed to contact you if we're not getting in the site or something like that. We have to go through the lead. Because that's new. Last year, if we couldn't get in, we just called you and Derek and you got us in.
Yes, ma'am. If you don't mind, let's update that and say that please reach out to the leads.
So just to be clear, the monitoring packets will go out to the lead and the subs, and it's not just the leads disseminating to subs, so it's going to everybody.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Thomas, should we send you the 2 names of who our people are that are going to get in there? Or do we have to send that to our, so it's Judy and I, finance and me. Do we send that to you or to our lead, or how do you know who to send access to the site to?
Yes, ma'am. So in your chart monitoring packet, in your monitoring packet, you will get a link to register for the FTP site. So whomever that your agency has designated to access the FTP site will register using that link.
But the email will come to who? Like you'll
It's
send
not an email. It will just be a survey, and then we'll send back a direct email to the people who have registered.
Right, but to register, you'll send that to me? Like who will you send that to?
Yes, ma'am. That will come in the monitoring packet to the single point of contact for your agency.
Okay.
Yep. So whoever the SPOC that was been identified for your agency will receive that monitoring packet. All right. Any other questions? So also in that monitoring packet, we will make available a link to today's recording so that if you or staff need to go back and review any of this, and also we will include today's PowerPoint so that you can reference back any of the information presented today. All right, if there are no other questions, then we wish you well for the rest of your week, and we look forward to another successful year of monitoring. Tom, anything from the recipient's office?
No, Thomas, I appreciate, all the work that you put into making this process as smooth as possible. I also appreciate that folks could go back if, let's say, for example, you've submitted policies and procedures and nothing has changed. It takes a lot of pressure off of folks. So trying to simplify, this is not much different than last year or the previous year. So, and many of you have been through these processes. So there shouldn't be that much new, or whatever is new Thomas has gone over. So Thomas, thank you so very much to the leads and everybody that are providing services. Just know that I know that you do exemplary work. I'm proud of the work that we do on behalf of this EMA. I also know that we are required to do our due diligence as the recipient to make sure that everything is, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So thank you, Thomas, for that. And for everybody else, that's all I got.
All right, great. With no other questions, we will end the call and give you back the rest of your day. Thank you, and we look forward to another successful year. Have a great week.